17-year-old Maya Johnson adjusted her noise-canceling headphones as she settled into seat 2A of the first-class cabin. The leather seat was incredibly comfortable, and she was looking forward to the 5-hour flight from New York to Los Angeles. Her father had insisted she fly first class for her college visit to UCLA, saying his little girl deserved the best. Maya pulled out her iPad to continue reading for her AP Literature class. She was an honor roll student, planning to study business administration just like her father. The plane was still boarding, and she watched other passengers file past her seat toward economy. A middle-aged white woman in an expensive designer suit approached, checking her boarding pass multiple times. She had perfectly styled blonde hair and carried herself with an air of superiority that Maya immediately noticed. The woman's name was Victoria Sterling. Though Maya didn't know this yet, Victoria stopped abruptly when she saw Maya in seat 2B, right next to her assigned seat 2A. "Excuse me," Victoria said loudly, her voice dripping with condescension. "I think you're in the wrong section, dear." Maya looked up, confused. "I'm sorry?" "This is first class," Victoria continued, speaking slowly as if Maya couldn't understand. "Economy is that way." She pointed toward the back of the plane with a manicured finger. Maya felt her cheeks flush. "I know this is first class. This is my seat." She held up her boarding pass showing seat 2A clearly printed. Victoria snatched the boarding pass from Maya's hand and examined it with exaggerated scrutiny. "This must be some mistake. There's no way." She trailed off, but her meaning was clear. Other first-class passengers began to stare. Maya felt the familiar weight of being the only black person in a space where others questioned her right to be there. "Ma'am, that's definitely my seat," Maya said firmly but politely. "My father bought this ticket for me." Victoria let out a sharp laugh. "Your father? What did he do, steal a credit card?" The comment hit Maya like a slap. She took a deep breath, remembering her father's words about staying calm and dignified in situations like this. "That's completely inappropriate," Maya replied, her voice steady despite her anger. Victoria wasn't finished. She flagged down a flight attendant, a young woman named Jessica, who approached with a professional smile. "Yes, ma'am, how can I help you?" Jessica asked. "This girl is sitting in first class, and I highly doubt she belongs here," Victoria announced loudly enough for half the cabin to hear. "I need you to check her ticket and move her to her proper seat." Jessica looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, if she has a valid boarding pass for that seat, look at her." Victoria interrupted. "Does she look like she can afford first class? This is obviously some kind of mistake or fraud." Maya's hands trembled slightly as she handed her boarding pass to Jessica. The flight attendant examined it carefully. "This is definitely a valid first-class ticket for seat 2A, Jessica confirmed. Victoria's face turned red. "I want to speak to the captain. I refuse to sit next to someone who clearly doesn't belong here. This is probably stolen or fake." "Ma'am, please lower your voice," Jessica said diplomatically. "The boarding pass is legitimate." But Victoria was beyond reason. "I pay good money for first class to avoid having to sit next to people like her. I want her moved immediately." The entire first-class cabin was now watching the spectacle. Maya felt tears of humiliation and anger welling up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. An older gentleman across the aisle spoke up. "Ma'am, that's completely uncalled for. The young lady has every right to be here." Victoria whipped around. "Stay out of this. I know what I'm talking about." Captain Williams, a stern-looking man in his 50s, appeared after being summoned by the crew. He surveyed the situation with experienced eyes. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked. Victoria immediately launched into her complaint. "This girl is sitting in first class, and I believe her ticket is fraudulent. I want her removed from the plane immediately." Captain Williams looked at Maya's boarding pass and then at his tablet, checking the passenger manifest. "Miss Johnson, this ticket was purchased 3 days ago with a valid credit card. Everything appears to be in order." "That's impossible!" Victoria shrieked. "I want her searched. Check her ID. There's no way she can afford this." "Ma'am," Captain Williams said firmly, "you're creating a disturbance. If anyone needs to be removed from this flight, it might be you." Victoria's eyes widened in shock. "Me? Do you know who I am?" "I'm Victoria Sterling. I fly first class every week for business. I'm a platinum member." "Mrs. Sterling," the captain replied, "your membership status doesn't give you the right to harass other passengers." But Victoria was relentless. "Fine. If you won't remove her, then I demand to be moved to a different seat. I refuse to sit next to her." Captain Williams sighed. "Ma'am, this is a full flight. There are no other first-class seats available. Then I want a full refund. This is discrimination against me." The captain had heard enough. Mrs. Sterling, I'm going to give you one final warning. Either take your seat and behave appropriately, or you'll be removed from this aircraft. Victoria crossed her arms defiantly. I'm not sitting next to her, and that's final. Captain Williams nodded to his crew. Please escort Mrs. Sterling off the plane. Security officers boarded the plane as Victoria's protests grew louder. This is outrageous. I demand to speak to your supervisor. I'm going to sue this airline, she shouted as two officers approached her. Ma'am, please gather your belongings, one officer said calmly. No. I paid for this seat. She's the one who should be removed. Victoria pointed accusingly at Maya. The other first-class passengers watched in stunned silence as Victoria was escorted off the plane, still screaming about the injustice of it all. Several passengers actually applauded as she was removed. Maya finally allowed herself to breathe. The gentleman who had spoken up earlier leaned over. I'm sorry you had to endure that, miss. That was completely inappropriate. Thank you, Maya replied quietly. I appreciate you speaking up. Jessica, the flight attendant, approached Maya's seat. Miss Johnson, I'm so sorry about that incident. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to make the rest of your flight more comfortable. As the plane finally took off, Maya texted her father, Dad, you won't believe what just happened. At 35,000 feet, Maya decided to call her father. She had been debating whether to tell him about the incident, knowing how upset he would be. Hey, sweetheart, came the familiar warm voice of Marcus Johnson. How's the flight? Dad. Maya's voice cracked slightly. Something happened. Marcus immediately picked up on his daughter's tone. What's wrong, Maya? Maya told him everything, Victoria's accusations, her demands to have Maya removed, the humiliation she felt in front of all those people. The line was quiet for a long moment. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was controlled but Maya could hear the anger underneath. I'm sorry you had to go through that, baby girl. You handled it perfectly, stayed calm and dignified just like we talked about. I just don't understand why people think I don't belong in first class, Dad. My grades are better than most kids. I've never been in trouble. Why do they look at me and assume I'm doing something wrong? Marcus sighed deeply. Unfortunately, sweetheart, some people make assumptions based on the color of our skin. It's not right, it's not fair, but it's reality. The important thing is that you know your worth and you never let anyone make you feel less than the amazing young woman you are. I know, Dad. It just hurts. I know it does. Listen, can you tell me the name of the woman who did this to you? Mia thought for a moment. Victoria Sterling. She kept saying she was some kind of platinum member and flies first class all the time for business. There was another pause on the line, longer this time. Victoria Sterling, Marcus repeated slowly. Yeah, why? Do you know her? Marcus cleared his throat. Not personally, but I know who she is. She works for Sterling and Associates, a marketing firm. Maya, there's something I need to tell you about my work. What do you mean, Dad? Marcus chose his words carefully. You know how I've always told you I work in business management? Yeah, well, that's true, but I haven't been completely specific about my position. Maya, I'm the CEO of Johnson Industries. Maya nearly dropped the phone. Wait, what? Johnson Industries, like the Johnson Industries? The company with the huge building downtown? Yes, sweetheart. That Johnson Industries. Maya's mind raced. Johnson Industries was one of the largest corporations in the country, with subsidiaries in technology, real estate, and media. She had known her father was successful, their house, her private school, the first-class ticket, but she had never realized the extent of his success. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me? Because I wanted you to grow up normal, to understand the value of hard work and humility. I didn't want you to think you were better than anyone else just because of money. And frankly, I was protecting you from situations like what happened today, people treating you differently because of our family's wealth. So when that woman said I couldn't afford first class, she was making assumptions about you based on your race, not knowing that your family probably has more money than she'll ever see in her lifetime. Maya felt a mixture of emotions, anger at Victoria's treatment, pride in her father's success, and confusion about why it had been kept from her. Dad, what are you going to do? I'm not sure yet. But I promise you this, there will be consequences for how you were treated today. After Maya's flight landed in Los Angeles, Marcus Johnson made several phone calls from his corner office on the 40th floor of Johnson Industries headquarters in New York. Sarah, he said to his assistant, I need you to get me all the information you can on a woman named Victoria Sterling. She works for Sterling and Associates. Right away, Mr. Johnson. Is this about a potential business deal? Marcus paused. In a way, yes. Within 2 hours, Sarah had compiled a comprehensive report on Victoria Sterling. She was indeed a senior account executive at Sterling and Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm that had been trying to land Johnson Industries as a client for over 2 years. Victoria had been the lead on their unsuccessful pitches. Marcus also learned that Victoria had a history of complaints against her for inappropriate behavior towards service workers and subordinates, though nothing had ever been formally documented. Most interestingly, Sterling and Associates was currently in financial trouble. They had lost several major clients in recent months and were desperately seeking new business to stay afloat. Marcus made another call to his legal team. I want to explore our options regarding a discrimination incident involving my daughter. Also, I want a full review of any current or potential business relationships with Sterling and Associates. His head counsel, James Mitchell, listened carefully to the story. Marcus, you have several options here. We could pursue legal action against the airline, though they actually handled the situation appropriately. We could look into filing a discrimination complaint against Mrs. Sterling personally. Or, well, sometimes the most effective response is simply letting natural consequences play out. That evening, Marcus sat in his home office, staring at his computer screen. He had over 500,000 followers on LinkedIn, including CEOs, politicians, and media figures. His posts regularly got thousands of views and hundreds of comments. He began typing, "Yesterday, my 17-year-old daughter Maya was flying first class to visit colleges. She's an honor roll student, volunteers at our local food bank, and has never been in trouble a day in her life." A fellow passenger, Victoria Sterling of Sterling and Associates, decided that Maya didn't belong in first class. She demanded that my daughter be removed from the plane, suggesting that Maya's ticket was stolen or fraudulent. She made several inappropriate comments about Maya's race and economic status. Maya handled the situation with grace and dignity, far more than Ms. Sterling showed. The airline crew did the right thing and removed Ms. Sterling from the flight, sharing this not for sympathy, but as a reminder that discrimination is still alive and well in 2024. My daughter shouldn't have to prove her worth to sit in a seat I purchased for her. No one should. Ms. Sterling, you assumed that a young black woman couldn't afford first class. You were wrong about that, just as you were wrong to treat my daughter the way you did. Everyone else, please remember that respect and dignity should be given to all people, regardless of their race, age, or perceived economic status. #respect, #dignity, #leadership, #discrimination. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then clicked post. Within hours, Marcus's LinkedIn post had hundreds of likes and comments. By the next morning, it had been shared thousands of times and picked up by several news outlets. Comments poured in from fellow CEOs, civil rights advocates, and ordinary people who had experienced similar discrimination. "Thank you for speaking out, Marcus. Your daughter sounds like an amazing young woman. This is exactly why we need more diversity in leadership positions." Well said. I work in customer service and see this kind of behavior all the time. Good for you for calling it out. Maya Johnson sounds like she has an amazing father. The way she handled this shows her character. But not all the comments were supportive. Some people criticized Marcus for playing the race card or suggested that there might have been more to the story. Marcus wasn't surprised by the mixed reactions. He had been black in corporate America long enough to know that speaking out about racism often made people uncomfortable. What did surprise him was the call he received that morning from David Sterling, CEO of Sterling and Associates, Victoria's boss. "Mr. Johnson," David Sterling's voice was tense on the phone. "I'm calling about the incident involving my employee, Victoria Sterling." "I see," Marcus replied neutrally. "First, I want to apologize personally for Victoria's behavior. It was completely unacceptable and does not represent the values of our company." Marcus waited for him to continue. "I've been trying to reach Victoria since your post went viral this morning, but she's not answering her phone. When I spoke to her yesterday about the incident, she gave me a very different version of events." "I'm sure she did." David cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Johnson, I know this is extremely inappropriate given the circumstances, but I have to ask, are you the Marcus Johnson from Johnson Industries?" "I am." There was a long pause. Marcus could practically hear David's heart sinking as he realized the full scope of what Victoria had done. "Oh God," David muttered. "Mr. Johnson, we've been trying to get a meeting with your company for 2 years. Victoria was actually supposed to be working on our latest pitch proposal. Was she now?" "Sir, I cannot express how mortified I am about this situation. Victoria will be terminated immediately, of course. But I'm praying, that this incident won't affect any potential business relationships between our companies." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Sterling, let me ask you something. If my daughter wasn't the child of a CEO, if she was just a regular teenager whose father worked a regular job, would you be firing Victoria?" David hesitated. Yes, of course. This behavior is unacceptable regardless. But you wouldn't be calling me personally to apologize, would you? Another pause. Probably not, David admitted quietly. Then you're missing the point entirely, Marcus said. This isn't about protecting a business relationship. This is about basic human decency. Victoria Sterling woke up that morning to 47 missed calls and hundreds of notifications on her social media accounts. She had turned her phone off the night before, still furious about being removed from the flight. When she finally turned her phone back on and saw Marcus's LinkedIn post, her blood ran cold. The post had been shared over 10,000 times and was trending on Twitter. Her name was being mentioned alongside words like racist, discrimination, and privilege. Her personal social media accounts were flooded with angry comments from people who had seen the story. Someone had even found her company photo and was sharing it along with the hashtag first class racist. Her phone rang. David Sterling. Victoria, what the hell happened on that flight? David, I can explain. Did you really tell a teenager that her father probably stole a credit card to buy her ticket? Victoria's mind raced. She had been so confident the day before that she was in the right. David, you don't understand. This girl clearly didn't belong in first class. I was just, Victoria, do you know who Marcus Johnson is? No, should I? He's the CEO of Johnson Industries. The company we've been desperately trying to get as a client for 2 years. The company that could single-handedly save our firm from bankruptcy. Victoria felt the room spinning. That's impossible. That girl couldn't be. Victoria, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out of the building when you come in to get your things. The line went dead. By the third day, the story had exploded across social media and traditional news outlets. Hashtag first class racism was trending nationally, and Maya's story had become a symbol of the everyday discrimination that Black people face. Maya, still in Los Angeles for her college visits, found herself at the center of a media storm she never wanted. News outlets were requesting interviews, and her social media followers had jumped from 500 to over 50,000 overnight. Dad, I don't want to be famous for this, she told Marcus during one of their daily phone calls. I know, sweetheart. But sometimes our experiences can help other people. You've received hundreds of messages from young Black women who've gone through similar situations. Your story is giving them courage to speak up. Maya read through some of the messages she'd received. Thank you for staying strong. Last year, a store security guard followed me around just because I was shopping in the expensive section. Your story reminds me that I belong anywhere I want to be. I'm a Black doctor, and I still get patients who ask if I'm qualified to treat them. Seeing how you handled that situation with such class gives me hope. My daughter is 12 and starting to ask me about racism. I showed her your story to teach her about dignity and strength. Victoria's termination was just the beginning of her consequences. The viral nature of the story meant that her name was forever linked to the incident. When potential employers searched for her online, she tried to control the narrative by posting her own version of events on social media, claiming she had been misunderstood and that people were taking things out of context. But her posts only made things worse, as people screenshot her words as evidence of her inability to take responsibility. Several companies that had been considering her for positions withdrew their offers. A professional organization she belonged to launched an investigation into her conduct. Even some of her friends began distancing themselves from her. Meanwhile, Sterling and associates struggled to recover from the PR nightmare. Despite David Sterling's quick action in firing Victoria and issuing public apologies, several existing clients reconsidered their contracts. The company was forced to lay off additional employees and eventually filed for bankruptcy 6 months later. Marcus Johnson never had to actively destroy Victoria's career, as some media outlets suggested. Her own actions and the natural consequences of those actions were punishment enough. Despite the media attention, Maya continued her college visits. At UCLA, she was invited to speak to a student group about her experience. Standing before an audience of diverse college students, she felt nervous but determined. I want to be clear about something, Maya began. I didn't ask to become the face of discrimination in air travel. I was just trying to fly to Los Angeles to visit colleges. The audience listened intently. But what happened to me happens to people every day, in smaller ways that don't go viral. The woman who questioned my right to be in first class didn't know my father was a CEO. She made assumptions based solely on my appearance. Maya paused, gathering her thoughts. The real issue isn't that she didn't know who my father was. The issue is that she felt entitled to question my right to be there at all. Every person deserves to be treated with basic respect and dignity, regardless of their parents' job title or their bank account balance. The applause was thunderous. After her speech, a young Latina woman approached her. Thank you for saying that about dignity not depending on your parents' success. I work 3 jobs to pay for college, and sometimes I feel like I don't belong here because I can't afford the same things as other students. Maya smiled. You belong anywhere you work hard enough to be. Trans-American Airlines, the carrier involved in the incident, initially tried to stay out of the public conversation. But as the story continued to dominate headlines, they realized they needed to respond more proactively. CEO Jennifer Walsh personally called Marcus Johnson to discuss the incident. Mr. Johnson, while our crew handled the situation appropriately by removing the disruptive passenger, we recognize that your daughter never should have been put in that position in the first place. I appreciate you calling personally, Marcus replied. Your crew did do the right thing. We'd like to do more than just apologize. We're implementing additional diversity and inclusion training for all our staff. We're also creating a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior by passengers. That sounds like a positive step. We'd also like to invite Maya to be part of our new advisory council on passenger experience. Her perspective would be valuable in helping us ensure all passengers feel welcome and respected. Marcus was surprised by the offer. I'll discuss it with Maya, but I think she'd be honored to contribute to positive change. 3 months later, Maya was back in New York for winter break from her freshman year at UCLA. She was shopping with friends at an upscale mall when she encountered a familiar face at the cosmetics counter. Victoria Sterling looked different, older, more tired. Her designer clothes had been replaced with more modest attire, and she was clearly working as a sales associate. Their eyes met across the counter, and Maya saw immediate recognition and shame in Victoria's face. Maya, Victoria said quietly. I owe you an apology. Maya's friends looked confused, not recognizing Victoria from the viral story months earlier. You don't owe me anything, Maya replied calmly. No, I do. What I did was inexcusable. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Victoria's voice was genuine, lacking the arrogance and entitlement from their first encounter. I lost my job, my reputation, my financial security. But honestly, I deserved it. What I'm really sorry about is that I made you feel unwelcome and questioned your right to be somewhere you had every right to be. Maya studied Victoria's face, looking for signs of insincerity but finding none. I accept your apology, Maya said finally. I hope you've learned from this experience. Victoria nodded. I have. More than you know. At UCLA, Maya threw herself into her studies and campus activities. She joined the Black Student Union, volunteered with first-generation college students, and started a mentorship program pairing high school students with successful professionals. Her experience on the plane had changed her perspective on her privilege and her responsibilities. She began to understand her father's decision to keep his CEO status private during her childhood. He had wanted her to develop her own identity and values before understanding the family's wealth and influence. I get it now, Dad, she told Marcus during a phone call. You wanted me to know who I am beyond your success. Exactly. Your character, your values, your work ethic, none of that comes from money. It comes from who you are as a person. Maya was thriving academically, but she also became increasingly aware of the subtle ways discrimination manifested in her daily life. Professors who seemed surprised by her thoughtful comments in business classes. Study group members who assumed she was there because of affirmative action rather than merit. The constant need to prove herself in ways her white classmates didn't experience. But she also found strength in community, connecting with other students who understood these challenges and supporting each other through the difficulties of navigating predominantly white academic spaces. Inspired by Maya's experience and the thousands of messages they received from young people facing discrimination, Marcus decided to take action beyond the viral LinkedIn post. He announced the creation of the Maya Johnson Foundation for Educational Equity, a scholarship program specifically designed to support students from underrepresented backgrounds who demonstrate academic excellence and leadership potential. This foundation isn't just about providing financial assistance, Marcus explained at the announcement press conference. It's about affirming that every talented young person deserves the opportunity to succeed, regardless of the color of their skin or their family's economic situation. The foundation's first class of scholars included 50 students from across the country. Maya was heavily involved in the selection process, insisting that recipients be chosen not just for their grades, but for their character and their commitment to lifting others up. One of the scholarship recipients was Destiny Williams, a young woman from Detroit whose viral video defending herself against a teacher's discriminatory comments had caught Maya's attention. When I saw your story, Destiny told Maya at the scholarship ceremony, it gave me hope that speaking up against injustice was worth it, even when it's scary. 2 years later, Maya received an unexpected piece of mail, a wedding invitation from Victoria Sterling, now Victoria Sterling Martinez. The invitation was accompanied by a handwritten letter. Dear Maya, I know this is probably the last thing you expected to receive from me, but I wanted to invite you to my wedding. Not because I expect you to come, I understand if you'd prefer not to, but because I wanted you to know how much that day on the airplane changed my life. After losing my job and facing the consequences of my actions, I was forced to do some serious soul-searching. I began seeing a therapist to address my prejudices and understand where they came from. I volunteered with organizations working on racial justice issues. I learned about privilege and unconscious bias. Through this work, I met Carlos, my fiancé, who is Mexican-American and has faced his own experiences with discrimination. He helped me continue growing as a person. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't want to minimize the harm I caused you. But I wanted you to know that your dignity and grace in that situation ultimately led to positive change in my life. You could have responded with anger or hatred, and it would have been justified. Instead, you showed me a better way to handle conflict and injustice. Whether or not you choose to attend, please know that I think about that day often, and I'm grateful, despite everything, for the lesson you taught me. Sincerely, Victoria. Maya showed the letter to her father. What do you think, Dad? Marcus read it carefully. What do you think? Maya was quiet for a moment. I think people can change. Not everyone does, but some people can. And maybe some good can come from something that started out so hurtful. Maya decided not to attend the wedding, but she did send a card with a brief message, wishing you happiness in your new marriage and continued growth in your journey. 6 months later, Maya received another letter from Victoria. This time, it included a newspaper clipping about Victoria's work with a non-profit organization dedicated to combating discrimination in customer service industries. The letter read, I thought you'd want to know that your story continues to inspire positive change. I speak to service industry workers about unconscious bias, and I always tell them about you, how you handled that situation with such class and dignity. Thank you for continuing to make the world better. For years after that fateful flight, Maya graduated summa cum laude from UCLA with a degree in business administration and a minor in social justice. Marcus beamed with pride as he watched his daughter cross the stage. I end her valedictorian speech. Maya reflected on her journey. For years ago, I experienced discrimination that could have filled me with bitterness and anger. Instead, it taught me valuable lessons about resilience, dignity, and the importance of using our voices and privileges to create positive change. She looked out at the diverse graduating class before her. We are the generation that will inherit the world's challenges: racism, inequality, injustice. But we are also the generation with the power to solve them. We've learned not just from textbooks, but from experience, from each other, from moments that tested our character. Maya's eyes found her father in the audience. My father taught me that true success isn't measured by wealth or titles, but by how we treat others and what we contribute to making the world more just and equitable. Today, as we graduate, I challenge all of us to remember that our education is not just for our own advancement, but for the betterment of society. The applause was thunderous. Maya Johnson, now 26, walked through the halls of Johnson Industries as the company's newly appointed Director of Diversity and Inclusion. She had spent 3 years after college working for other organizations, determined to earn her position through merit rather than family connections. Her office overlooked the same city where her journey began on that flight 5 years earlier. On her desk sat 2 framed photos, one of her with her father on graduation day, and another of the first class of Maya Johnson Foundation scholars at their graduation ceremony. The viral incident that could have been just another story of discrimination had become a catalyst for lasting change. The foundation had awarded over 500 scholarships. Victoria Sterling Martinez was now a full-time diversity consultant. Trans-American Airlines had become an industry leader in inclusive customer service training. Maya's assistant knocked on her door. Ms. Johnson, your 2 p.m. appointment is here, the high school student who won the essay contest about overcoming adversity. Send her in. Maya smiled. A young black girl, probably around 17, the same age Maya had been during the incident, walked nervously into the office. Don't be nervous, Maya said warmly. I'm Maya. Tell me your story. As the young woman began to speak about her own experiences with discrimination and her dreams of starting her own business, Maya was reminded of why that difficult day on the airplane had been worth it. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become the catalysts for the most meaningful changes. Maya's story started with ignorance and prejudice, but it became one of growth, forgiveness, and the power of turning adversity into opportunity. The first-class seat that Victoria Sterling thought Maya didn't deserve had ultimately led Maya to a first-class life, not because of wealth or privilege, but because of character, resilience, and the determination to make the world a more just and equitable place for everyone.